Helping you with real estate, Mr. Mike Johnston.
Welcome everybody. Today we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about backup addendum and how you can utilize that form a little bit better. So let's go ahead and take a look at the document itself. So here we go. This particular document, as we can see, is called the RE18. It's a backup offer addendum. Now, if you ever write up an offer on a property and there's already an offer pending on it, you can utilize this particular document or addendum to help put your offer in second position. So if the sellers accept this addendum to your purchase and sell agreement, then it puts your offer in second position. Now, it doesn't affect the first offer, everything's still there. So let's take a look at this particular document, see what it says. So addendum number, RE18 backup offer addendum. Put down today's date. It says this is an addendum to the purchase and sell agreement. This addendum makes the purchase and sell agreement between the parties to this agreement a backup offer, contingent on the failure of a purchase and sell agreement already executed with another buyer. Addendum means that the information below is added material to the agreement, such as lists or descriptions, and/or means that this form is being used to change, correct, or revise the agreement, such as modification, addition, or deletion of a term. So on here, you'll put down the purchase and sell agreement date, the ID number, the property address, and the names of the buyers. Now, these buyers are the backup buyers because there's currently an offer in first position, and then the seller's name. Number one, seller is currently in a binding purchase and sell agreement, dated, and you can put that down, with a third party that is not party to this agreement, offer in first position. Seller has the right to change or amend the terms of the offer in first position without any consideration to this agreement and without advising the backup buyer of said changes or amendments. Number two, this agreement between the backup buyer and seller does not take precedent over the offer in first position, so it's still valid and going forth. The terms of this agreement are contingent upon the failure and cancellation of the offer in first position. Seller is only obligated to the terms of this agreement if the offer in first position is terminated and/or fails to close. Number three, notice. If the offer in first position fails to close, or if the seller obtains knowledge that the offer in first position has been terminated, the seller shall give written notice to the backup buyer within 5 business days, if left blank, or you can put some other date there, of obtaining knowledge that the offer in first position will not close. All parties agree and acknowledge that upon delivery of the notice stated herein, the parties will immediately be placed in a binding contract to purchase and sell the property regardless of the backup buyer's consent or acknowledgement of the notice. So by having this document, reading this particular part, if the sellers give notice to the backup buyers that they're now in first position, the other one's fallen apart and they're there, the backup buyer doesn't have to acknowledge that. We don't need their signature or for them to sign something. They're automatically put in first position. So if your buyer's wanting to get out of the transaction or has changed their mind or something, they need to do so, and we'll cover that in just a second, prior to them being put into first position. So if the seller gives notice, then they're put in first position and there's not a way out for that particular part. They have a binding contract. Number four, closing. Upon giving the written notice referred to in paragraph 3 above, the transaction contemplated by this agreement shall close within 45 calendar days from the date of delivery of the written notice by the seller to backup buyer. Now there it shows a number of calendar days. You could always put together some other addendum that has a specific date that you're going to close instead of within the 45 days. So that's still an option you can do later on. Termination. Backup buyer at its sole discretion. Number 5, expiration. This agreement shall expire and be terminated if the offer in first position closes or within blank calendar days, 45 if left blank, after execution of this agreement by backup buyer and seller. So this puts a time frame on it. So if it doesn't happen within so many days, then the buyer's not obligated to do so, or the seller's not obligated to keep them in the backup position if it's within that time frame. Number 6, termination. This is where the backup buyer can get out of the transaction because they're in a backup position up until they receive notice or until that 45 days or that time frame where it terminates. So reading number 6. Backup buyer at its sole discretion may terminate this agreement at any time prior to receiving the written notice referred to in paragraph 3 above by delivering written notice to the seller of buyer's termination of this agreement. If the buyer chooses to terminate this agreement pursuant to this section, the earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. Typically, to do this, you'd use an RE20 form, the notice to terminate contract, and release earnest money. Earnest money hasn't been received, then you don't have to worry about that second portion, but you can do the termination with the top part of that particular document. Okay. Number 7, the timing of the parties' performance obligations under this agreement, with the exception of paragraph 5 above, including time periods for inspection, contingencies, covenants, and other obligations, shall not commence until the seller delivers the written notice referred to in paragraph 3 above. This is a nice clause to have there because the time frame for their inspections and everything like that do not begin until this notice was given. So as soon as this notice was given, not acknowledged and signed by anybody, but once it was signed at the bottom of this next page, page 2, then that time frame starts up. And that way they're given that notice and they're in a binding position for that. Paragraph 8, earnest money. Buyer hereby tenders or will tender immediately upon notification of the failure of the offer in first position X number of dollars as earnest money. And you'd fill this out similar to the purchase and sell agreement, how it's going to be noticed. And if you need to explain more, you have section 9 that you can do that. So everyone initials that page, property address, ID number on the top. Other terms and or conditions, contingencies could be put here. Then the backup buyer's sign and date, the seller's sign and date, and then we have a binding contract addendum to put these people into backup position. Now, when the offer falls apart or it doesn't close in the offer in first position, this is where the notice comes in. Notice to the buyer of first position. Pursuant to paragraph 3 above, the seller hereby gives notice to the buyer that the offer in first position failed to close and was terminated. The agreement between the buyer and seller is now a binding agreement for the purchase and sale of the property. The seller signs this, dates it, times it. And that's when the contract is now bound. So they're now, the second position buyer is now in first position. Okay? So remember, if you want to terminate this particular thing, you need to, if you're the buyer in second position, fill out an RE20 to terminate the contract and have that be signed by everybody. That needs to be done prior to receiving notice that this is in first position. Second thing is, it's a good addendum to utilize if you're wanting to be a backup offer. So if you ever have an offer that you submit and your people are willing to wait a little bit, they could submit this backup offer and be in second position and continue to look for homes or other things. And if they find something else that works for them, they could terminate this particular one prior to executing a contract on the other property. And that way they're not bound to buy 2 properties. Okay? It's been a great time. Again, if you have any questions on any of this, please let me know. Again, just wanting you to know that this has been a great little simple presentation, and go ahead and subscribe to this channel so you can see other things that are going on. There's additional things that are there for you. So if you have any other topics that you'd like to have covered, please let me know. Okay? Again, Mike Johnston. Have a great day.